Welcome everybody to another QB Power Hour. Today we're actually doing an Apps Power Hour. We're going to be talking about intro to app stacking and data integration with QuickBooks. So I'm very glad to have you guys joining me this morning. Glad to have you here. Our agenda, we're going to talk just briefly about QuickBooks Power Hour and the Apps Power Hour, introduce your host to you. We'll talk about the CPE process, we'll thank our sponsors, and then the main part of our webinar today, we're going to be talking about learning more about app integration with QuickBooks. Understand the basics of stacking. What is app stacking when you're working with multiple apps with QuickBooks? We'll talk about that. And then also, what about if you've got information or data in another system or another app that doesn't integrate with QuickBooks? How can you do that integration or import that data into QuickBooks? So we've got a lot of stuff in there. We also have some time for Q&A, so we will do that kind of throughout. And then at the end of the session, we'll have some time for Q&A as well. We will type our question or type answers into your questions as best we can to keep up with you. So a little bit about the QB Power Hour and Apps Power Hour. It's a webinar series, usually every other Thursday. You can see the upcoming ones that we have. Hector's doing a couple the first part of February on managing the desktop sales tax data, and he's also then going to do a deep dive into sales tax and multi-state sales tax. So he's going to be doing those two the first couple of weeks of February. And then towards the end of February, we don't have a topic titled yet, but it's going to be another Apps Power Hour. Then a lot of times we're talking about both desktop and online. Today we will mention both. And then a lot of times we will have special guests with third-party apps talking about practice management or pricing or other things like that. So that's a little bit about our Power Hours. My name is Michele Wong. I am a CPA with an MBA in entrepreneurship, the owner of Long for Success. Thrilled to be an international speaker for Intuit. I've been a contract trainer for them for 10 years now, and I absolutely love it. So thank you guys for joining us. Glad to have you here today. Hector Garcia is my partner on the QB Power Hour. He's really busy right now, as a lot of you know, with the January 31st deadline coming up. But Hector does a lot of these power hours with me, and he will be doing those first part of February with Avalera and sales taxes. And then Heather is my co-host with the Apps Power Hour. Heather, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Michelle. Hi, everybody. I'm Heather Satterlee, and I'm really excited to be on today's webinar. I am also part of the Intuit Trainer Writer Network and have been working with Michelle on all kinds of projects with Intuit, including the QuickBooks Online core and advanced certification materials and training. So really, really love working with Michelle. Really excited that we're doing this project together. In addition to working with Intuit, I also have my own practice. So I have a firm called Satterlee Training and Consulting, and my firm really focuses on the QuickBooks Online ecosystem, both helping accounting professionals learn and really maximize using the QuickBooks Online ecosystem, and also helping end users or our clients to implement integrated applications and things like that. So really excited to be with you guys today. Thanks, Michelle, for having me.
Oh, Heather, I'm glad. I love working with you too. And I will tell you all, Heather is a confirmed appaholic. So we are thrilled to have her with us for these Apps Power Hours because she is a beloved appaholic. I say that with admiration. All right, so a little bit quickly about the CPE and the ACE process. If you need CPE, continuing professional education, you must attend the live webinar. It's not available if you're watching this on YouTube later. You have to be logged in at least 50 minutes. We're going to have 4 polling questions throughout the webinar. You have to answer at least 3 of those. The CPE certificates normally take about 3 weeks. It is tax season, as you know, and Hector takes care of all the CPE, so you might give him a little slack and a little extra time there. This episode is not approved for ACE. I see lots of you are asking when are some more ACE sessions coming up. We will get working on that to try to get some more ACE approved sessions coming up late February or March or something like that. All the CPE certificates up to December 7th have been emailed out already. A couple of upcoming events. Heather is doing a Zapier 5-week workshop. It did start a couple weeks ago, but she has those available. I think, Heather, do you have the recordings if they wanted to join at this date, or is it too late?
So Actually, we will have the recordings on my website on demand sometime in the future. We're working on that, and I'm actually going to be doing a second session starting on March 2nd. So if you head on over to my website, which is satterleeconsulting.com, and you click on webinars and classes and webinars, you can register for that March session. So it's a 5-week in-depth Zapier training. We learn all kinds of cool stuff like, the basics of Zapier, more advanced tools and features that you can use. We spend a whole session talking about how to use Zapier with QuickBooks. We spent a session talking about how to use Zapier for social media, marketing, and communications. And then we actually do a 1-hour workshop where we solve a client problem. We have a fictitious client called Chloe's Cookies, and we actually help that client solve a problem using Zapier. So
awesome.
Really fun. We've had a great run of it. Actually, tomorrow is our last session of this run. So love to see you guys on that.
And Heather's going to give you a sneak peek of Zapier later in this webinar today, talking about integrating stuff from PayPal. So you'll learn about that a little bit later. Zapier is amazing. Also, if you can attend Scaling New Heights or QuickBooks Connect, we would love to see you at some of those upcoming events as well. Also, quickly, if you could, you can download the handouts from the GoToWebinar toolbar. And so you can get this link from the handouts, or else, I'll copy and paste it when Heather's talking. I'll put it in the Q&A box so you can click on it. Please, please, please help us by taking the Intuit average billing rate survey. I know a lot of you look at those articles when we post the results of the average billing rate survey. So we need lots and lots and lots of people to answer that survey so we have better results for you. You can answer it no matter where you are. If you're from Canada, great. If you're from the UK or Australia or wherever you happen to be, we would love you to answer that rate survey. So please do that, maybe right after the webinar today. We'd love to have you do that. We also want to thank our sponsors. They're the ones that make this free for you, free CPE, free ACE credits when we do those, not today, but when we do those. So we want to make sure we thank our sponsors. T-Sheets, a QuickBooks company now, the #1 rated app, and apps.com is awesome. You can get a free account as a certified pro or as a pro advisor. I don't think you have to be certified, so you can get a free account as a pro advisor. We also want to thank Aero Workflow. It is an amazing workflow manager created by other accountants and pro advisors to help you manage your firm and the tasks and all the deadlines that you have to do. Aero Workflow is cool. You'll have to check that out. And then also HubDoc. We're going to talk a little bit more about HubDoc in the app stacking section. It's an amazing document aggregator, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and get into some of the details here on the basics of apps integration and app stacking, so that some of you may already be familiar with this, but we want to go over some of the basics. As you know, there are hundreds of apps out there. And if you think about it, just like your phone, I mean, we all have a smartphone, right? It's really just a phone, right? No, it's so much more, right? It is so much more powerful because of the apps that we have on it. We can do a lot of things with our phone because of the apps that we have on our phone. And it's the same thing with QuickBooks. You have QuickBooks in the middle, and it's your core system, but then you can do so much more with all of these apps that are available depending on the needs of the business. And this is where small businesses now can use these third-party apps and create a really powerful system to help them improve their workflows and streamline their processes and actually get things done more efficiently. And there's research and studies done that proves businesses that invest in technology are more profitable. They have higher revenues and increased profitability. So that's one thing. I think I went off last time on my little discussion about the cost of all these apps. I know as accounting professionals, we tend to get hung up in that. We need to forget that, though, because our clients are ready to adopt this. A lot of them are, not all of our clients. So we want to focus on the clients who are interested in streamlining their business and implementing technology and things like that. Focus on them first. This is where a lot of us as accounting professionals, this is a huge growth area right now. And this is where a lot of us are moving into doing this because our clients want it. So we have to be able to support them. And that's one reason why we're doing these Apps Power Hours, is to help you all learn more about these. Now, there are apps for both desktop and online. I've got the two different URLs there so you can see the differences. There are way more for QuickBooks Online. And one of the things that I guess I kind of wanted to talk briefly about, and we could get into a lot of technological details here, but I didn't want to, but understanding, like when we worked with some apps that integrated with QuickBooks Desktop, a lot of times we would have some problems or some issues, or the data wasn't accurate, or there were problems with the data, and we'd have errors, and we'd have all kinds of just different things. One of the things to realize is there is a difference, big difference, between the database for QuickBooks Desktop versus QuickBooks Online. And they use different things for implementing or importing these apps and stuff. So with QuickBooks Desktop, you didn't have the same checks for data integrity and things like that. When things were being imported, it wasn't checking and making sure that things had the data integrity that we needed. But with QuickBooks Online, and the API there, and that's what they use for these developers to write apps to integrate with QuickBooks Online. It's an API. It has a higher degree of data integrity. It's checking and making sure that the data coming in doesn't have some of those data integrity problems and things like that. So you have fewer problems working with integrations with QuickBooks Online, and especially when you're doing app stacking and you have more than one app involved, it's easier and less prone to problems with QuickBooks Online compared to QuickBooks Desktop. Heather, do you want to add anything in there without getting too technical or too detailed on why it's easier and less problems with QBO?
So, you know, as Michele said, you know, with QuickBooks Online, they, you know, without getting too techie, they have those built-in diagnostics, right? So when we're importing into QuickBooks Desktop, you know, we don't have all the checks and balances. So what's really neat about QuickBooks Online is if you try to, you know, send any data over to QBO that doesn't meet the requirements of the QuickBooks Online API. And if you don't know what an API is, what that actually stands for, the acronym stands for Application Processing, what is it? Application User Interface. So it's an interface. It's basically a dashboard so that you can work with the different fields and tables and things that are behind QuickBooks Online. So that's what that means. Programming. For some reason, you know how sometimes your brain does that, Michele? You just can't find the word. Application Programming Interface. Thank you. I finally got it out there. So that the QuickBooks Online one has the built-in you know, security measures so that you can't even send over information if it's not in the right format. Whereas in QuickBooks Desktop, you can. If you use an IIF file, it doesn't have any of those safeguards. So that's why if you try to import an IIF file and maybe it doesn't have an AR account or something, you can really, really mess up your desktop company by doing that.
Right. And you know, Heather, and I did launch the poll question for you all while we're talking about this stuff, so answer the poll question if you could. You know, Heather, one thing that I want to kind of mention is, a lot of times, like you just said, if you import that data, like let's say without an account or something, you can really mess things up. Well, I know a lot of us were like, okay, well with desktop, I can back up before I import, so if it does get messed up, I can just restore my backup. So that's been a huge complaint of people working with QuickBooks Online. I've got good news for you. You can back up QuickBooks Online, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. So hurry up and answer that poll question. You've got about 5 more seconds. If you need CPE credit, please answer the poll question. I'm going to close it in 3, 2, 1. Done. And 75% of you are crazy busy right now. 22% not too busy, and 2% are not busy. I'm really glad you guys are joining us this time of year, because I know it can be really crazy busy with, you know, the January 31st deadlines and things like that. So thank you all for joining us here. I'm glad you're taking a break to join us for this. So I see a comment. Somebody says, no way, you can back up QBO? Since when? It's been around for a while. And so let me just talk a little bit about, you know, why would we want to back up QuickBooks Online? Because Intuit already backs up QuickBooks Online. That's one of the beautiful things about QuickBooks Online is, let's say, you know, my computer crashes, somebody steals my computer, or God forbid there's a flood like we've had, you know, the flooding around from various hurricanes or a fire or any kind of natural disaster, and you lose your computer, it's backed up automatically. All you have to do is go get another device. The data is there because Intuit is backing it up, and they have redundant data centers. If one data center would go down from an earthquake or something or another, they have another data center. It'll roll over to that. So the data is safe and secure. But a lot of us still want to make our own backup with QuickBooks Online because, like Heather just mentioned, sometimes you import something and it messes things up. Or maybe somebody came in and they were working in the wrong company file all day. So it gives us the ability to restore to a specific date. So just like with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop, we now can do a backup and a restore. It's a safety measure, so we want to make sure we've got it backed up prior to connecting apps or importing data. And some clients just want it. Some clients just say, I want my own backup and I want to know that I have it available. So there's a lot of reasons why people want to back up with QuickBooks Online, and it might be a situation where I'm getting ready to implement all these apps, so I want to be backing it up separately right now. Once everything is set up and working great, maybe you don't have to keep having a separate backup on an ongoing basis. So it's really a decision between you and your client. So there's a couple that I'm going to talk about. And first of all, some of you might have heard about it was from Jobber. What was the name of it, Heather? I can't think of the name now.
It was Safety Net.
Safety Net, thank you. Yes, somebody typed it in there. Thank you, guys. Safety Net was around for a while. I don't know that they ever fully released it. It was kind of a beta and a testing mode, things like that. But then they kind of dropped off and weren't doing it anymore or supporting it anymore. But now the way I understand it is some people have bought it and they're kind of bringing it back. So that may or may not be an option. But two really big ones here are Chronobooks and Rewind. So these things are they're backing up these changes in real time. As you're doing things, it's backing up on an ongoing basis. It has unlimited historical data retention. So just like with your computer, if you've ever had to restore your system, there's various backup points in there, and you can roll back the data. So you can choose which point in time you want to roll back the data to. So you may have several different restore dates or restore points. You can choose where you want to do that. You can copy a company or the historical data if you needed to. Maybe for some reason you have to split a business. Maybe somebody set it up and put both companies in one subscription and they didn't mean to. You may want to split the data so you could use tools to go in and do data deletion. So you might want to make a copy of it or something. Now with Chronobooks, you get one free company for pro advisors. You can back up your own account, your books. You can back up yours for free. Then there's also Rewind, and Rewind has been around for a while for things like Shopify and some other things, but it's now available for QuickBooks as well, and you can get it free until March 1. So you want to try it out, test it out, you want to see how super easy it is, go sign up for Rewind or go sign up for Chronobooks, the free company for your own, and kind of check it out. Now, the pricing on these are usually like on Chronobooks, it's $8 a month for pro advisors. So it's $8 a month per company. So let's say you have 10 clients that you want to do this on, you'd be paying for 10 of them. Now, like I said before, you may not want to be backing up all the time, but if you're going to be doing apps integration, I definitely recommend as a best practice, back up your company before you're doing the apps integration, just in case something goes wrong. You're like, oops, that wasn't pretty. You can just restore that back up. So once you get all the apps integrated and everything's working smoothly, you may not continue to do the backup. So in other words, maybe I want to use Chronobooks and Rewind for a month or two while we're implementing all these apps, and then I don't want to use it on that particular company anymore. Or maybe the owner of the business always wants a backup. You can always provide them a backup and have that going on ongoing. So it's really up to you. So remember, you get some discounts and free companies if you're a pro advisor. If you're not a pro advisor yet, it is free to join for QuickBooks Online. So there's the link there. You can get that later. And you'll be able to get your free company. Now, what is app stacking? When we're talking about app stacking, this is where we have more than one app involved. Okay, it's more than one. Every app does not have to integrate directly with QuickBooks. You know, a lot of times I hear people say, well, if I'm using this and I'm using this and I'm using this, how do they all talk to QuickBooks? They may not all be, and I've got some slides here to show you this in just a minute. What we need to do is consider what data is going to be maintained in the app versus in QuickBooks. A lot of times the detail is in a third-party app and you import summary data into QuickBooks. So let's look at a couple of visual examples on this. So here's an example where we have 3 different apps that are integrating into QuickBooks. Now you can see the data is going into QuickBooks on app 1 and 3. The data is coming out of QuickBooks on app 2, and app 3 is talking. So see, you can have these different apps talking to different ones, but app 2 is not going directly into QuickBooks. It might go through another app, which then goes into QuickBooks. So you have to look at all of these moving pieces when you're creating an app stack. So when you're thinking about this, you have to kind of, and for me, it does help to kind of lay it out and draw what data needs to go, which directions, to kind of draw it out like that. So here's an example. Let's say we've got a client that's using a merchant services. For some reason, they're not using QuickBooks payments. They're using another merchant processor, maybe Square or something else. They also have to have a shopping cart to help with the order information and all that. And then we also need something for our inventory management. Maybe the shopping cart isn't robust enough and QuickBooks isn't robust enough. I want an inventory management app that's going to help manage my inventory, create pick lists, packing slips, and also do the invoicing. So I have 3 different apps here. You know, how is this going to integrate with QuickBooks? Well, this is where the merchant processor, the payments, may be going directly into the shopping cart. So you've got data going from the shopping cart and the merchant processing center. Those 2 are talking to one another, but this merchant services does not have to integrate with QuickBooks at all. It's integrating with the shopping cart. The shopping cart is integrating with the inventory management, and data is flowing back and forth between those 2. And then the inventory management app is sending summary data over into QuickBooks. So only one of these 3 apps is integrating into QuickBooks. We can go get reports on our inventory from that app. We don't need the details on inventory. We also don't need the detail on all of the orders. We can get reports on that from the shopping cart, on your orders and your sales and things. So you don't have to have all these details into QuickBooks, and we don't have to have all 3 of them going into QuickBooks either. So this is where you really got to kind of sit down and think about what's involved, what direction is the data flowing, what does need to talk to one another, and kind of think about that data flow. So here's an example. Let's say we've got a client, and we're talking about the AP workflow in this example. Let's say we've got a client who's using HubDoc. I mentioned they're one of our sponsors. Love them. So let's say they're using HubDoc. It will fetch your bank statements for you. So that's awesome. Your bank, your credit card statements sitting there ready to reconcile when you need them. But HubDoc will also get invoices or bills. Let's say you've got people that are emailing bills in and things like that. You might be collecting bills or from third-party vendors in HubDoc. Then those bills can integrate into Bill.com, where you actually do the bill payment, and then Bill.com is the one that's talking to QuickBooks Online. It's sending the data into QuickBooks Online. So you may not have a direct connect between HubDoc and QBO. You may be going through Bill.com. Now, instead of HubDoc, they might be using Receipt Bank. They might be using Expensify. They might be using something else, or the same thing with Bill.com. It may be another accounts payable processing that's going on there, like Mineral Tree or some other ones. So this is just an example, and you could change these things out for different apps. Then also, here's one that's just a little bit different to show you and talk to you about the data flow. So for example, let's say we've got T-sheets, right? T-sheets is awesome. We got all of our employees that are entering our time. We got the managers approving time and all of this. T-sheets is taking care of all of our time tracking. From T-sheets, we need to do payroll. We also need to invoice our clients or our customers. So from T-sheets, the payroll data For processing payroll, T-Sheets may be sending that information over to QuickBooks directly, so on the bottom there, maybe sending that over to QuickBooks Online where we can process payroll. However, we also want to be doing our invoicing and things like that, so we may go from T-Sheets, send that data into Notify, where we're doing our invoicing and some other things for job costing and things like that, and then Notify is talking to QuickBooks Online. So these give you some different examples of what's going on and how the app stacking works and things like that. So somebody is saying, I am completely confused which account uses the apps. I've set up non-accountants logins so that I can use the apps on my clients. Is there a way to access the app on a client through the accountant's login? Yes. So when you're setting these things up, and let me just pop into QuickBooks to show you this really quickly. When you're setting these apps up, and we talked about this last time, so I'm not going to go over it very long, you should be signed up for QuickBooks Online as a pro advisor. So with that, you get QuickBooks Online Accountant. When you log in to QBOA, QuickBooks Online Accountant, on the left side over here, you're going to see the apps. In here is where you will see client apps or firm apps. The firm apps are things that are integrating with your books, your own books for the firm. Under client apps, this is where if I wanted to add T-Sheets for a particular client, I would go out here, search for T-Sheets, get that app, choose which client it is. So over here you can see, and these are a bunch of sample clients that are all inactive now, but you would choose which client do you want that for. So then this will be integrating with QuickBooks if it's going directly into QuickBooks with its own kind of integration. Once you approve it, you don't have a separate login. It's going to do the integration itself, and you can see the integration and what's coming over from third-party apps on the audit log as well. That's going to be showing up there. So you'll be wanting to do that. Somebody says, I can't, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just, we have the same brain, Michelle, because I think I was just about to say what you're about to say. So I'm going to go back on mute.
Well, now I forgot what I was going to say, so go ahead.
So you were just addressing the question that, sometimes they were saying that sometimes, or that they don't even see the client tab, right, in QBOA. And I think you were just going to explain that if you're a team member, you don't.
Right. Yeah.
But,
so in here, what Heather's talking about, if you're logging into QBOA, you may not see client apps. You may not see firm apps. It depends on the permissions that you have as a team member. So it's going to vary depending on what you can see and what you can access there. So if you're a staff member of the firm, you probably won't see client apps. So yeah, that is a very good point there. What else were you going to add?
Well, I was going to add that there is a workaround to that. So I am a team member on a couple of QBOA realms, just because I work with bookkeepers and accountants with their clients sometimes. And you actually, if you are a team member, you can add apps by going out directly to the app developer site right now. So I could actually go on out to, Zapier or whatever, if I'm a team member, and log in and connect my client's QuickBooks Online company to Zapier, even though I'm not the master admin in that QBOA firm. But eventually that's going to go away. So right now that's a workaround. So if you have staff and you're comfortable with your staff, signing your clients up for apps, and you really should probably think about that, there is that workaround. But if you're not, then then you probably don't want to tell them they can do that. So. Are you there, Michelle?
Heather, are you there now?
I'm here now. Yeah, I lost you. I couldn't hear you for a little bit.
I muted myself, sorry. So somebody said when they click on Find Apps, they don't find Rewind. It's not in the App Center for Intuit apps. So the reason for that is it's relatively new for QuickBooks. It's been around for a while, backing up BigCommerce, backing up Shopify and other things, and now it's available to back up QuickBooks. So it is not in the App Center yet. The App Center at apps.com, and when you're in QBO and you click Find Apps, those are apps that have gone through the approval process with Intuit to make sure that they integrate well and all this other stuff, and to get listed at apps.com. So sometimes that takes a long time. I don't know how long it takes, but Intuit is busy processing all of these apps that went in there. So you're right, it's not there yet, but if you just Google Rewind QuickBooks, like I just did, you find it very quickly and easily, and you can go out here and sign up for it here. Same thing with Chronobooks. I think Chronobooks is in the apps store, but I'm not sure, at apps.com. I haven't looked for it. So if you don't see it, Google it and you will find it there. So that's something to keep in mind. Somebody says, how do we access the app if the client added the app themselves? We should still see it there under client apps. Isn't that correct, Heather? If you have the permissions.
Correct. You should be able to see it there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you would be able to see that there. Okay, so again, when we're talking about the app stacking, think about the data flow. Okay, so these are all things that will integrate with QuickBooks, but they may not go directly into QuickBooks, depending on the situation. So you've got to think about the data flow and what you want to go into QuickBooks and which ones need to talk to it. You don't necessarily have to connect, like I had in this slide here. HubDoc may not be directly connected with QuickBooks at all. So that's something to think about. Now, what about situations where these apps don't integrate with QuickBooks, or you've got them in another system or something like that? I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll question, and Heather's going to talk about that in just a minute. So when apps don't integrate with QuickBooks, how do we get the data in there, or how do we create an integration? Because you can take some third-party system and create an integration to get the data to QuickBooks. So Heather's going to cover that in a second. But answer this poll question. Have you taken the Intuit Average Billing Rate Survey? If you have not yet, please, I'm really begging you for help on this. We need lots and lots of people so it's better results. And we put out posts and articles talking about what the average billing rates are, both on an hourly basis, on a fixed fee basis. We talk about what other accounting professionals are doing in their practices for billing clients. Are they using fixed fees or value pricing? Do they email their invoices? All kinds of just different details on billing practices for accounting professionals. The data is more meaningful the more people that we get to answer it, okay? So please answer the poll question. It only takes about 10 to 15 minutes to do it. So I know a lot of you, 75% of you said you're really busy right now. You have to take a coffee break once in a while or a lunch break. Answer that quickly on your lunch break or coffee break or something. We would really, really appreciate it. And also, Heather and I are working on an apps survey, which is going to be coming out in the near future, in the next week or two. So we'd love for you to do the apps survey when that comes out as well. But please do the Intuit Average Billing Rate Survey and share the survey link with others in your firm, if you've got other accounting professionals in your firm or people that you work with, or share it on social media, trying to get more accounting professionals to do that survey. We would really appreciate it.
And okay. Michelle, I'm just going to chime in because a bunch of people are asking, where do I get the link for the survey? I actually pasted it into the chat box. So if you guys want to head over to the chat box, you can find the link to the survey right there.
So just to clarify, they don't have the chat box, they just have the Q&A box. Well, but Heather sent it out there, and I will copy and paste and send it out again. So you'll see it in the questions box. Heather pasted it in there, and I will paste it in there in a minute when Heather takes over. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll. Now, 70% of you said you're going to do this after the webinar, so I hope you will, and 14% of you have done it already. Thank you very much. We appreciate that. All right, Heather, I'm going to let you take control, and I will copy that link for you all in there.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay, so let me hide that little, whoops, let me move that out of the way too. My computer's being a little funky today. It was like that yesterday where it's not sure that it wants to share all of the monitors with me at the same time. So I apologize for that. So let's talk for a few minutes about other ways to integrate data into QuickBooks. So, you know, Michelle talked about app stacking and talked about when there's a native integration between an app and QuickBooks. But a lot of times, either there isn't a native integration, or we don't like the way that the native integration behaves with QuickBooks, right? So there's certain apps, and one of them is PayPal, right? So PayPal and Square sometimes don't bring the sales information in the way that we would like, and that's just a limitation of the actual integration that was built by the developers. So sometimes we can use other utility or connector apps to help bring that data in the way that we want, and it gives us more control over how the applications talk to each other. So reasons we might do that, we want to customize those integrations to meet our client specific needs. For example, if I wanted to connect Square to QuickBooks Online, it brings in all the details. And maybe I have a client that really doesn't want all of those details in their QuickBooks company. It's a duplication, I don't need it, and it just causes problems for me. So we can use apps like Zapier or Workato or CData and other apps to set up custom integrations that we build ourselves and actually, to bring in that data exactly the way we want. The other way that we can use these apps is we can automate data workflows. So for example, I use Zapier a lot. I'm a Zapier evangelist, love it, use it all the time, but I have custom integrations that I've built that automate my social media posts. So what happens is I use a program called Feedly to basically bring all of the different publications that I read on a regular basis into one place, and then I'm able to kind of categorize them into different categories using that tool. Well, I've set up a custom integration that every time I add a particular article to a category in Feedly, it automatically posts that article to Meet Edgar, which is the social media distribution tool that I use. So it automatically posts it, and then Meet Edgar automatically schedules those posts on my social media account. So by doing that, the first week that I set up this integration between Zapier, which is basically connecting 3 different apps, right? I'm sorry, in that case, 2 different apps. What it's doing is it saved me 5 hours. So I saved 5 hours just by setting up that Zap to actually do things, do those processes for me. So all I do is every morning when I'm drinking my coffee, I go onto Feedly, I look at the articles, and then if I like an article and I want to share it with the world, I just categorize it, and bam, everything else kind of happens on its own. So where that comes in with QuickBooks is I can also set up those types of integrations to happen in QuickBooks. For example, I have a client onboarding Zap that allows me to, I send a link to a new client, right, saying, hey, fill out this client onboarding, information. They fill out a questionnaire, and it automatically creates a customer in my QuickBooks company, automatically creates a new folder and share file, and automatically creates a new user and share file. And now, with the new Practice Ignition integration with Zapier, it also adds a new client to my Practice Ignition account. So those, that particular example was a 4-step process, right? I had to do 4 things when I got a new client. Now I do 1 thing. I send an email with a link to a Google form, and I'm done. So that's really the power of using these types of apps that automate workflows. Sometimes we need to add lots of transactions, existing transactions, into QuickBooks, whether it's desktop or online. And so we can use apps, these connector apps, to do that as well. So we have apps like CData, QODBC, which really connect to the back end of both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop and allow you to push data into QuickBooks. And one of the things, I'm actually going to show you CData in just a few minutes, is that they use Excel kind of as the intermediary app to get the data from one app to another. So as long as I can get the information out of an existing app into Excel, then I can use one of these other tools to pull that data from Excel into QuickBooks. Okay, and examples of that are Z System, CData, and then there's a bunch of other ones out there as well. So we also have need to modify existing data. So one of the first things I did with CData, and it was a huge lifesaver for me, is anybody ever had a client that posts all of their sales receipts and they forget, like they have one deposit or something, or one received payment, and they change that drop down to from undeposited funds to the bank account, and then they forget they did that, and like the next day they go in and they receive all their payments, and every, like 15 payments get posted directly to the bank account register, right? Linda's saying that happens all the time. So cool thing is in CData, I can actually connect to the QuickBooks company, pull down the table for those received payments or sales receipts, and I can manually change the deposit to account from the bank account to undeposited funds in like 2 seconds. And I will show you what that looks like. It's pretty amazing. So those types of apps can be used to fix errors and clean up our clients' data in a lot less time than if we manually went into QuickBooks and did it one by one, which is something that I absolutely can't stand. So absolutely. Okay, so utilities to build custom integrations and to automate workflows. So there's a bunch, there's 4 here on the screen. We have OneSAS, Workato, API, and Zapier. And they all work essentially the same. They have a dashboard that basically connects the APIs, or those application programming interfaces to them, and then they provide an easy to use dashboard where you can connect the different apps that you're using. And I'm going to demo Zapier. I'm going to show you the Zapier's PayPal to QuickBooks Online integration, which is actually pre-built, by the way, on the Zapier website in just a minute. So the way those work, as I said, is that you sign up for the account, and then you would connect your the app that you want to grab the information from, and you need to define what that trigger is. And so a trigger means something happens. So a trigger could be a new customer, or a new vendor is created, or a sales receipt is created, or a payment is received from a customer. But anyway, it would be that's something happens, right? And we're talking about things that are happening in QuickBooks. It could also, a trigger could also be, hey, I get an email from somebody in Gmail. Then for every trigger, you can create actions and filters. So an action means I'm going to take the data from the trigger. So if it was a new customer, then it pulls in all of the fields for new customer, right? And then I take that data and I do something with it and send it to a second app, right? So in the action, I could say, okay, I'm taking that customer data, and then I want to take the fields from that customer and I want to send them over to my Google Contacts. And I'll be able to map all of the fields from that QuickBooks data to the fields in Google Contacts, and it will automatically populate it. Then what happens is once you turn the Zap on, every time Zapier sees that trigger occur, it automatically does the action item for you. So you basically plug and go and it just runs. So it really is amazing. I've automated a ton of stuff in my own practice, really passionate about it because I just see so much potential with apps like these, using, pro advisors using apps like these to solve problems that we have with our clients so easily. So I think in the upcoming months and weeks, you're going to hear me talk a lot about Zapier. So here I'm going to show you the PayPal Square sales to QuickBooks. So initially, the way that those integrations are pre-built, right, is the PayPal dumps the transactions into QuickBooks, and sometimes we don't like the details that come in. Either we don't like the fact that it's creating new customers because our customers sometimes spell their names differently every time they buy something from us, or you don't like the fact that, when it pulls in the item from PayPal, it just uses a generic PayPal item in there, and you actually want to use multiple income accounts. There's lots of different reasons that we don't like PayPal and Square integrations. So what we can do is we can put Zapier in the middle of that, and we can say, okay, Zapier, I want you to go on out to PayPal or Square, and every time a new sale happens, I want you to pull that data into Zapier, and then I have the control to tell Zapier what information to put on that sales receipt in QuickBooks. Okay, so let's jump into Zapier, and I'm just going to show you what that PayPal integration looks like in Zapier, just to illustrate how this works. So you're going to see right here, this is a PayPal to QBO integration, and you're going to notice that this says template instant. And what that means is that Zapier has built out this template for its users, and it's really plug and play. So all you have to do is go find the template, which is really easy to do. You just click on Explore, and you would type in the two apps that you want to connect. Let me go ahead and close that. So I put in QBO, and then I'm going to put in PayPal, right? And then it's going to tell me all the things that are already pre-built for those particular apps. So I have perfect matches for that selected app. So you can see right here that I can add PayPal customers to QuickBooks. I can create invoices. I can create sales receipts. And look, I have two different Zaps for sales receipts. And you do have to pay attention if there's more than one template that says it does the same thing, because sometimes they're a little bit different. So when you want to use that Zap, all you have to do is click on use this Zap, and it will kind of set it up for you. And what you'll do is it'll tell you what it's going to actually, how it works and what you're going to need. And then you click create the Zap. The first step would be to go ahead and select what the trigger is. And in this case, it's a successful sale. So I would go ahead and I would say continue. Then what I would need to do is with PayPal, it's a little complicated because you have to actually put in a Zapier IPN setting into your PayPal account. The good news is with Zapier, they make it super easy. So if I click here and I was logged into my PayPal account, it would bring me right to that screen where I just copy and paste this webhook. So just because it's using a webhook isn't super scary, because all I have to do is click this link and paste, which is really nice. So I would go ahead and click continue, and then I would click fetch. It would go on out to my PayPal account and it would grab a transaction. And then I would go ahead and click on it and I would view the information from that transaction. You can see it. This is just a test Zapier transaction. And then I would click continue, and then I would move on to the action items. So what I'm telling Zapier here is, whenever a new sales receipt happens, I want you to create a sales receipt. So I click continue. I have to connect to the appropriate QuickBooks company, and notice that I can have multiple QuickBooks companies connected to Zapier. I make sure the connection is valid, and then I'm going to go ahead and, oops, sorry, that was to connect a new account, and then I'm going to click save and continue. Okay. Then my next step is to go through and map these fields. But notice that by using the template, a lot of the fields are already mapped for me. If they weren't mapped for me, then I'd have to go through and I'd have to kind of understand what fields go into each section. But the nice thing is we have this setup preview. So when I actually click in a field, it actually shows me the test data that exists in that first trigger step. So I know I'm doing this really fast. I don't expect you guys to be able to go and do zaps, but this is how it works. And what I really want to illustrate here is how we're taking fields from one app, right? So this address zip, that's actually coming from PayPal. And then I'm telling it, hey, take that piece of data, take that address zip, and I want you to put it in this message field in QuickBooks Online. So you can see how I'm actually mapping that data from one application to the other. And that's how these types of integrations work. So even though there may be a native integration out there, if it's not behaving the way that you want, then you can actually go in and map it exactly the way that you want and really customize the workflow for your client. So that's
awesome, Heather. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll question.
Sure. Okay.
And I was going to ask you a couple questions that people had typed in. So go ahead and answer this. This is our third poll question. We still have one more. Heather, does Zapier work the other way around? Could it take an invoice in QuickBooks and integrate it to PayPal in order to send it to the client or the customer?
So in PayPal, so basically so that they could pay via PayPal?
Yeah, sounds like.
So no. So it doesn't go that way around. Let me see what the PayPal, so yeah, so QuickBooks, I think with PayPal, because it's a merchant processor, you would have to, add that to, I think you can pay via PayPal with QuickBooks Payments now, right? That's one of the offerings. So I think you'd probably do it that way. Yeah. But no, that is not, it doesn't go back the other way. And an interesting thing, when you close the poll, what I can show you is the way you can find out what information can be sent over is, through the app details. So when we close the poll, I'll show you where to find that information. So every app has different things that they can do in it. So for PayPal, and for all apps, they could have triggers, which are something happens in that app, and then you could do an action somewhere else, right? And then you have the actions where something's happening in a trigger app, and then you can bring that in, you can import that information into the app. Okay, so with PayPal, we only have triggers. We can't do any actions in PayPal, and I'll show you that in just a moment.
Okay, and so a couple of people say, what about with desktop? Does Zapier and some of these others, what works with desktop?
So the Zapier does not work with desktop. It only works with QuickBooks Online. Some of these other apps that I'm going to show you do work with desktop. So CData works with desktop. Z-Axis also works with desktop. So if you were looking to do integrations between QuickBooks Desktop and other things, you could use those. Now the automation, with Zapier, one of the beauties of it is that once you set up the Zap, when the trigger occurs, the workflow automatically happens. So you don't have to press a button to send the PayPal invoice over to QuickBooks Online. It just happens when it's automagical, right, Michelle?
Automagic.
Right.
I love that.
But
all right.
Go ahead. But with the desktop.
I need to close the poll. I
okay,
give
perfect.
people 3, 2, 1. All right, Go ahead, sorry.
Okay, so I just want to just show you real quick that with the integrations, remember we did that search up here, if I scroll all the way down to the bottom of the screen, you can see the app details for those particular apps. So it tells you what the triggers are, it tells you what the actions are. So these are the things that you can actually put in, bring into QuickBooks. And then these are the triggers that can occur in QuickBooks, and then you can send that data somewhere else. We also have searches as well. So to go back to my PowerPoint, CData and Z Systems both work with QuickBooks Desktop. Transaction Pro Importer also works with desktop and online. And I think all three of those actually work with both. This is Excel Importer, and that only works with QuickBooks Online. Now the issue is like with Zapier, once we set up that workflow, it just automatically happens as transactions start to get recorded in the Trigger app. But with these other types of apps, typically I have to push a button to get the data from one place to another, right? I have to go in and I actually have to initiate the transfer of that data. Now, if you're super fancy and you get a developer, they can write scripts that run behind the scenes on your local computer to automate that so that it does happen automatically. But then really, that's typically pretty expensive because you're hiring somebody to, to set up those automations and do some fancy programming locally, on a computer. So the nice thing about Zapier is, with QuickBooks Online, it's $20 a month because QuickBooks Online is a premium app. There is also a free version, but that doesn't include QuickBooks. That's pretty inexpensive, and it's usually, for a lot of these, anybody can really set it up because it's very easy to use. So let's go back. So importing past transactions. So with Zapier, one thing about Zapier is that it's only going to bring in the trigger. So it's only going to happen, the data exchange is only going to happen when a trigger occurs. So what happens if you have a bunch of data that already exists in an app and you want to get that data into QuickBooks, either online or desktop? We can buy these other tools like CData, Z Systems, Excel Importer, and Transaction Pro Importer, and we can use them to bring in the past transactions. The difference between these, they essentially do, very much the same thing, and they use Excel as that intermediary to bring in the data. But really, there's a difference. Transaction Pro Importer and Excel transaction is subscription-based, which means you're going to pay by for each QuickBooks company that you have connected, whereas with CData and Z Systems, you pay once. So you buy the program and then you own it, it lives on your computer. And as I mentioned, CData and Z Systems, they're both a one-time cost. They both connect to both QuickBooks Online and desktop, and you can connect multiple QuickBooks Online companies to them. So it's not per company. Manipulating or updating transactions. So a lot of times we need to update the transactions. As I mentioned about that, deposit to account in the receive payment transaction or the sales receipt, that happens a lot. And so you can use programs like this sometimes to update them. I know with CData, it definitely does it. I think Z Systems also has an update feature. And then, with Zapier, there's actually built-in apps in Zapier that do things like manipulate data. Like there's some, you can do math functions, you can do some email parsing, so you can parse data from an email. I actually use that for one of my clients to take the daily sales summary email from Square, and I just extract the totals, and then I use that parsed data from the email to send over a sales receipt for a daily sales summary in QuickBooks Online. Works great. And that's using a built-in Zapier app to parse that email. So that's some examples of manipulating or updating data. So I wanted to just show you how CData works, because that's one that I have some data in here, and it's pretty easy to demonstrate on how you can use the data. So let's go ahead and first of all, let me just say that CData, the one that I use, they have a whole bunch of different apps, but the one that I use is actually an Excel add-in. It costs $299 for the Excel add-in, and that includes both QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. Once you install it on your computer, the way you use it is you open up Excel, and then you click on this tab right here that says CData. So right now I have it connected to QuickBooks Online, but I could have it connected to desktop here as well. So to get the information from QuickBooks Online, I'm going to click from QuickBooks Online, and then I would select the company that I want to connect to. So in this case, it's Chloe's Cookies. And then I'm going to hit this little refresh button, and it's going to go connect to Chloe's Cookies, and it's going to pull in all the tables from QuickBooks Online. If I want to switch to another table, I just click this little table or view, and I select what I want to look at. So let's say it was sales receipt. And I'm not exactly sure what I have in Chloe's Cookies right now, but let's go see if there's anything in there. So I can go ahead and choose sales receipt, click refresh. I'll go out and grab the data, and when I click OK, it would add all of those sales receipts to this Excel spreadsheet, and I can view them here. So it looks like, see, I have these sales receipts right here. So what I can do is you'll see that I have the field name up at the top. Those are my column headers. If I go over here to, let's find the deposit to fields. Let me find that for you. Print status, email, payment reference. Here it is. See this deposit to account? Right now it's going to undeposited funds. But say, say it was pointing to the bank account, what I could do is I could come in here and I could change that account right in this column, and then I could update it in the QuickBooks company. So what I could do is I could go in and I could change it. Now, whenever you see read only, I can't change anything in this column. So it wouldn't be enough for me to go in and change this to the checking account. I would actually have to know what the account number was. And to figure that out, what you can do is you can go into QuickBooks Online and open up the account. Let me just go ahead and do that for you so I can show you where to find that. And then what I would do is I would just update that column, and then we would be able to update it and then tell CData to go ahead and update it as well. So let me just get that for you, and I'll show you the easiest way to find that number. All right, so I'm going to go into Chloe's Cookies. Give me just one.
And Heather.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of do the last poll question and things like that.
Sure.
Some people do have to leave at the top of the hour.
Oh,
so
okay.
I am launching the final poll question, and this is great information. Doesn't Heather know so much? I told you she's an appaholic.
I am an appaholic.
She has so much great information, and we really, both of us, have so much that we want to share with you. So this is your opportunity in this last poll question. What topics do you want us to go more in detail on? And remember, Zapier is amazing, and it is pretty complex, and that's why Heather does that 5-week session to help you learn more about Zapier. So Heather, did you say you were starting that again in March? I
am starting that again in March, absolutely.
And what's your website?
It's satterleeconsulting.com. Satterleeconsulting.com.
Very good. And Heather, somebody else asked, are these programs and apps compatible with both PC and Mac?
Yes, well, for the ones that work with QuickBooks Online, typically, yes, the cloud-based ones are because you run them in a browser. For Z systems and CData, I'm not sure because I'm a PC girl, so I'm not 100% sure about the Mac, if they have a Mac version or not.
Yeah, if they are cloud-based, though, it should be fine on the Mac. If it's
cloud-based, absolutely. So Zapier, yes. Transaction Pro Importer, the online version, yes. So I'm not sure about Z systems. I think that may be only PC.
And so here's something else I wanted to point out here. Heather, do you want to answer that question and type in your website? Somebody asked that real quick.
Of course.
One other thing, gosh, now I forgot what I was going to answer. Oh, somebody said, how can I integrate with a gas station, or how does this work for a nonprofit? I saw several different questions, and I apologize. There's hundreds of you, and I can't answer all the questions. But so this is where, though, that's exactly what these tools that Heather was talking about are for. I talked about apps that do integrate with QuickBooks already, okay? Heather's talking about, let's say you've got a gas station that is using some, special point-of-sale system that does not integrate with QuickBooks. That's where you can use these apps to create an integration and get the data into QuickBooks. Or like she said, you can pay somebody to write an integration for you. And it might be kind of expensive, but if it's ongoing, especially if it's a franchise and they have a lot of different gas stations or whatever, it might be well worth it for that client. A lot of times they can pay for the technology and it helps them to reduce the headcount. And then those employees can focus on other things because you automate that work and then you don't have to have somebody do it anymore. So for those of you that are answering the poll question, you've got 5 seconds left to answer this poll question. And I saw a lot of you said you want us to have all of the above as an option on that. Sorry, we only have 5 possible answers, I think it is. But anyway, so you've got 5 more seconds to answer this poll question. 4, 3, 2, 1, and I'm going to close that poll question. Those of you that have to jump off, we thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again. Remember, the first couple in February are going to be Hector covering sales tax with Avalara, and then February 22nd should be the next QB Power Hour. So those of you that have to jump off, thank you, but Heather and I do have a few more minutes to hang out around. So Heather, go ahead and finish up there.
Okay, perfect. So what I was going to show you is if you go into QuickBooks Online and you want to find that account ID, the easiest way to do that is to go to the accounting tab and then open up the register for that bank account. And that account ID will be sitting right up here in your browser address window. See where it says 17? That is the account ID for that particular account. So what I can do now is I can go back to my Excel spreadsheet and I can change this to 17. Okay, and we'll just change these two, that's fine. And then I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to highlight these 2 rows right here. And whoops, let me see if I can do that. Highlight these 2 rows. I'm going to click back on that CData. And then I'm going to say, hey, update those rows. Okay, and I'm going to say, yep, please go and do that. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to update them. Okay, now if I've included these in a deposit, I may get an error, but it doesn't look like that's actually happening. So see what it just did? It just changed the deposit to account from undeposited fund to cash on hand. So let's jump back over to QuickBooks and see if it worked. Let's go in there and see if we have any deposits in undeposited funds. Let's see. Look at that. How cool is that, right?
Yay!
Right? Isn't that like
automagic?
I know, it's automagical. So this is why I'm an appaholic, because this cool stuff exists and I love it. It just makes our lives so much nicer. So anyway, go ahead.
See, Heather, no, I just want to add, what you just said there, it makes our lives so much nicer. It allows us to make our clients' lives so much nicer, too.
Yeah.
This
absolutely.
is a great opportunity for us. As things are getting more and more automated, we aren't doing manual bookkeeping anymore. There's no need to enter data. This is a great opportunity for us to really learn about some of these tools and technologies and tell our clients, you don't have to have someone sit and do that. We can make it where it's fully automated. And they'll be like, really? And you can wow them just like Heather has been wowing you, showing you these things that you can do. So yeah, I think it's awesome. Sorry, go ahead.
It's amazing. So Lisa's asking, does the CData app pull from Excel into QBO? So what it's doing, Lisa, is I grabbed the QBO data and pulled it into Excel. That's what it did. And when I changed the data, I was able to go to the CData, use the CData utility to say, hey, take this data I just changed in Excel and then write it back to QBO. So it's communicating back and forth. It's bi-directional. Okay, but it doesn't change any data unless I actually tell CData to do it. So it's pretty cool. All right, so that's it. I just wanted to introduce you to a couple of these really neat apps that I love, and show you how apps really fit into the work that we provide to our clients. And as Michele said, our industry and the way that we work with our clients is changing because all of our traditional, accounting tasks are being automated by technology. So it's less about how do you enter a bill than it is how do you manage the apps that I'm using to, that are taking care of my financial data. So the more knowledge we have about these tools and about this technology, the better advisors we're going to be to our clients.
And Heather, talking about the average billing rates and things, I think this also has higher value that we're providing for our clients, and it's an awesome opportunity for value pricing. especially when you look at what we're able to save our clients in terms
Right.
of manpower to get the data entered. And remember, you know, I mentioned this early on, research has proven that these companies, when they invest in the technology, it allows them to be more efficient and ultimately more profitable. So your clients are going to love you because you're going to help them make more money and be more profitable. And we can offer, you know, value pricing for this. So I think it's a great opportunity for accounting professionals right now. So I'm very glad to have Heather joining me and have you guys joining me and learning more about these things.
Absolutely. No, very exciting. Couple last questions. Brenda's asking, does Zapier integrate with desktop? Sorry, it does not. So it only works with QuickBooks Online. It also works with 1,000 other apps. So if you're using apps like Trello or Gmail or Google Contacts or Asana, chances are if you want those apps to talk to something else and save yourself some time entering data into 2 places, Zapier will be able to do that for you. Oh,
Very
right.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you guys all, especially given that it's, you know, towards the end of January. I know how busy you all are. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. We hope to see you on future webinars. Any last comments, Heather?
Yeah, so actually I'm so happy I remembered this before we got off. For those, you know, one of our sponsors is Aero Workflow, and really exciting. They're actually in beta with Zapier right now. So if you use Aero Workflow, you can start zapping.
Awesome.
And that's pretty exciting news. So
very cool. All right. Well, thank you guys all for joining us today. I know you're busy, so try to stay sane and get some rest when you can, and we will see you on some future Power Hours. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks, Heather, for the awesome information.
Thank you, Michelle, and I'll see everybody soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.